Here's the top 6 of college football playoff top 25. Presented by Allstate, Georgia and Alabama, followed by Michigan State, Oregon, Ohio State, and Cincinnati. Pleased to be joined by the chair of the selection committee, Gary Barta, who's also the athletic director at Iowa. Gary, let's start with Cincinnati. How would you characterize the level of respect the Bearcats were given by the committee, being undefeated, win on the road against a team you say is in the top 10 according to the committee, but still ranked number 6?
Well, it's great to talk to you again, Reese. And I would say the committee has great respect for Cincinnati. The win at Notre Dame, clearly at Notre Dame, is a really impressive win. When you look at their schedule after that, or who they played after that, who else did they beat? And so that was the other question. And, you know, the committee has been watching games all year, and most recently in the last 2 weeks, a 2-6 Navy team, and then a 1-7 Tulane team with a freshman quarterback starting. So very impressive win against Notre Dame, a lot of respect. But looking at the whole picture, we feel 6 was the right place for Cincinnati.
And as I scan the rankings, I don't see any more teams in the American ranked at this point, which would tend to imply that they are close to their ceiling. Is that how you would characterize it? You know, absent chaos in front of them where everybody starts losing.
You know, we don't talk about a ceiling at all. Again, we look at what's happened so far. We don't project ahead. I think most everybody knows that. We look at what's happened so far, and Cincinnati earned their way to the number 6 spot with that big win, being undefeated, and with that big win at Notre Dame. But we haven't talked at all about a ceiling, so I really am not. I'm not ready to say there's a ceiling.
Okay, what about head-to-head? I mean, that's always it's in the criteria that among teams that are viewed as similar, that it is one of the criteria used to try to separate those teams. It seemed to be a defining characteristic not only between Ohio State and Oregon, but throughout these rankings. How did those discussions go with head-to-head being considered?
Well, you know, the committee, everyone has their own opinions, but as you go through with the 13 members, head-to-head is certainly talked about. When you talk about Oregon and Ohio State, Oregon has had some nice wins. They've played very good football. They've been through a lot of challenges, losing their starting running back and some other, you know, Thibodeau being their best player early on. But they beat Ohio State at Ohio State, and that was really important to the committee. Ohio State is playing great football. Since that time, they're on a roll. They're explosive offensively. So at the end of the day, that's why they're one slot behind Oregon because of the head-to-head. But right up there near the top because of how terrific they've been playing. Okay,
you had mentioned as we were getting ready to talk during that quick break that it's a real log jam. And if I heard you correctly, I think you mentioned 3 through 10 sort of offhandedly. Is Alabama clearly above the rest of that group in the judgment of the committee right now?
Well, the committee spent, right away, Georgia was a clear number 1, and a fair amount of conversation about where Alabama has come from and where they've been and who they've played and beaten, Mississippi and Mississippi State, and how well they're playing. But there was a lot of consensus for Alabama to be number 2. And then after that, it became from 3 to 9, we've probably spent a few hours yesterday and this morning working through 3 to 9 because there was so many different ways to approach it.
We talk about this often. I mean, I could ask the question simply and say how close, but because of the criteria and the methodology that the committee uses to evaluate these teams, sometimes you're not comparing teams as directly as you might anticipate. How difficult was it to separate that top 3 and then the next 3, because you guys do it in 6, take 3 out, and so on down the line? How difficult was it to take those top 3 out? Or to rank them at the top?
One of the things we do is we do put them in bunches, but then we vote on them in larger chunks. So what I mean by that is we'll look at Michigan State, Oregon, Ohio State, and Cincinnati all at once, and then we'll look at, we'll add Michigan to that in Oklahoma, and we'll go through that process. But ultimately, we'll vote for the first 3, and you vote for your top 6, and then the averages of everybody. So I'm telling you how sausage is made a little bit, but the averages come out, and Michigan State made its way to number 3 through that process. But Michigan State, they are still undefeated. They have that big win against Michigan this past weekend, and that was, they were behind, as everybody knows. They didn't panic. They came back and beat a very good Michigan team. And so that's how they ended up at number 3.
All right, Gary, telling us how the sausage is made and sharing that with America. That's why you're here, my friend. So we appreciate the insight.
And I'm from the Midwest, so I have.
You got a little insight.
I am from the
on
Midwest, so I've made sausage before.
For sure. Gary Barta, the chair of the College Football Playoff Selection Committee. Gary, we'll see you next week.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.